Orenstein from CG Reaction. This is Here's Who Really Won the War in Afghanistan by the channel Johnny Harris. The war in Afghanistan made these people very rich. Okay. Okay, so he's gonna talk about people, not countries. I don't know, I thought this was gonna be more like, centered towards country, but it's about people. Oh, this is interesting. Nobody makes videos like this, right? Really going deep into which war made which people, I guess, companies, right? The military companies that are private sector or something like that made, who got rich or something like that. Yeah, Johnny Harris is a great channel so far. I think I've watched 2 or 3 videos of him and the quality is just insane. So it's going to be really interesting to watch this one. So let's watch it. Remember, if you like my reaction, don't forget to like, subscribe, so I know which type of videos to react to more. History, games, or whatever. I'll cover a lot of topics. And my channel videos is probably going to be chaotic. There are way too many of them. And yeah, if you want to react to a specific video, comment down. Probably just search it with CG Reaction to see if it's there or not, because it's probably going to be already reacted to it or something. But yeah, let's watch it.
I've been deep in these documents, each of which is a piece of evidence that helps me piece together a very important question, which is who got rich off this 20-year war that we fought in Afghanistan? But first, let me tell you what happened on August 15th, 2021. The Taliban had entered Kabul after taking over the entire country of Afghanistan. The war ended as it had begun, with the Taliban in power once again. You probably remember the scenes from the Kabul airport. Total chaos as Afghans tried to flee their country. But there's one guy who saw a business...
God, every time I see a scenario where parents just basically give their kids to just... I don't care about me, just take my kid. It's just like too much, man. It's just too heavy.
Opportunity in all of this. This guy, Eric Prince, generously offered to help charter a plane to evacuate people from Kabul. The price tag, $6,500 per person. That was the market price that Eric Prince decided. But this wasn't the first time Eric Prince used the war in Afghanistan to get rich. In fact, this was one of...
In Afghanistan, asking 6,500. I mean, that's a big money, right? I mean, in India, that's a big money. 6,500, right? I mean, for at least an average person, your commoner person. Afghanistan, I'm definitely sure it's not richer than India, so it's gonna be big money for them too. I guess it's centered around the NRIs or something who's living there and I think is trapped in this. They are probably like 6,500 is the thing.
The last of many instances where this guy profited off the Afghan war. And some of the ways he did it were kind of messed up. So after digging through the numbers, the reports, the Senate hearings, all of it, we've established a list of some of the top people who got crazy, stupid, rich off of the war in Afghanistan.
On my orders, the United States military has begun strikes against Al-Qaeda terrorist training camps and military installations of the Taliban regime in Afghanistan.
Before we get into our list, I want to talk about an important term here, which is government contractor.
$300 million in government contracts.
U.S. defense contractor. Our broken system of government contracting.
At U.S. federal contractor registration.
All right, I don't know which story was that. I don't know which channel. I don't know, was that the Army and Navy guy channel? I forgot the name of that channel, who basically plays Fallout New Vegas and talk about it. I don't know, somebody talked about that, a private sector, right? Basically, there are military bases, like US military bases, but there are also private militaries, contractors. They're not US military, but they're private military who get paid by the US citizens or something, who are also at the same base together with US military or something like that. That felt surreal to me, right? Because any army just, defends their base is like something sacred or something, like only US Army, US personnel, but just contractors running around, I don't know.
We know that a government contract is worth more than the dollars awarded.
Here in the United States, we love the free market.
I'm talking about this.
So instead of having the clunky old federal government take care of all things war, we hire a lot of private companies to do it for us.
Yeah, capitalism at its best, I
companies
guess.
that make our weapons, feed our soldiers, build our bases, fuel our tanks, and literally fight our wars. Yes, we have private armies that we call security companies that basically are soldiers for hire. What this allows the government to do is post a job out there, like, we need someone to build a road in Afghanistan. And in theory, what happens is a bunch of private companies come together and they all bid on how much it would cost to build this road. And whatever company gives the best price is chosen to go build that road. It's supposed to help the government get the best price. Okay, so where am I going with this? What I want you to understand is that there is this bidding process for private companies to go do things that the government needs. But in wartime, a lot of those processes of bidding go out the window because we're in wartime. So it's like an emergency. So instead, you get a lot of situations where there is no bidding on contracts. The government needs something done in Afghanistan really quickly. This company could do it. Name your price, we'll give you whatever you need.
As a client, the U.S. government is guaranteed to have the funds to pay you and will always pay you.
And it's that.
All right, I don't know, but look, first of all, the whole US mentality of capitalism, I mean, it works, right? I mean, it's supposed to work at best. Like, basically, there are people out there, just give it to company. People make businesses, government doesn't spend as much, because let's be honest, if government spends, it's going to be more than a private company, because private company, sees more logistics and just makes it more efficient than the government would, right? Every time the government does something first, and then basically more private company comes up and it just got contracted. Capitalism work in that way. But obviously, just like everything in the world, it gets abused a lot of time. It gets manipulated. If I remember correctly, private companies like their security companies also have their, what are they called in the Senate? Lobbyists? Even lobbyists who basically, gives some donation to senators here and there and just, help their way or something. That's just fucked up, right? And yeah, and obviously in wartime, they profit like nothing. They probably inflate their prices 40-50%. Of course, the US is going to give that.
Very process that allowed people to take advantage of a system to let billions and billions of unaccounted for dollars be poured into private companies. All of this contributed to what a former Secretary of Defense called a culture of endless money inside the Pentagon. Okay, wait, before we go on, I need to thank the sponsor of today's video, which is BetterHelp. I've said this a bunch, I'm gonna keep saying it, which is that I'm a giant supporter of therapy. I think therapy is something that is stigmatized, and specifically for me, maybe it's because I was a guy or something, I don't know, but I never got messaging that I was supposed to go to therapy. But I've been going to therapy for 2.5 years now, and it has truly changed my life. BetterHelp is a service that tries to make therapy more accessible by connecting you, if you want therapy, to a network of over 10,000 professionals. And this isn't like a crisis line or a self-help program. This is real licensed therapists giving you therapy done securely over the internet. If you've ever looked for a therapist, you know that it's really hard. And the thing I respect most about BetterHelp, and the reason why I support what they're doing, is because they're trying to make that an easier thing to connect with a therapist. If you don't like the therapist you find, you can easily switch to a new one very easily for free. And BetterHelp allows you to connect with your therapist in between your sessions to get a timely response for whatever you're going through. So I'm a giant fan of BetterHelp. I appreciate them sponsoring this video. They're giving you 10% off your first month if you want to try it out. There's a link in my description. Clicking that link helps support this channel and gets you started on what could be a life-changing thing. I really, really, really support therapy. So check it out. Thank you, BetterHelp, for supporting this video, for supporting my channel. Let's dive back into the video.
I like the yellow line
now
thing.
Now that we understand government contractors, let's get to this list of people who got rich. First up is Robert Stevens, the former CEO of a company called Lockheed Martin.
Of course.
It's a company that manufactures like this helicopter, the Black Hawk. They manufacture missiles, fighter jets, bombs.
Oh, look at that. There was a war and Lockheed made profit. Of course they did, right? I mean, I should have known Lockheed's going to be the number one there.
They manufacture a lot of stuff that we use in war.
Yeah.
This company gets a lot of business from the Pentagon. Like in 2020 alone, this company got $75 billion worth of Pentagon contracts. I know that like when we get into billions, it's really hard to like know what that actually means.
Yeah, it's
but
big.
Just to put it in perspective, the entire budget of our foreign ministry, the State Department, totaled $44 billion. For the entire State Department, all of our diplomacy, $44 billion. And Lockheed Martin alone, this one company, got almost double that to make our weapons. 90% of Lockheed's revenue comes from the federal government.
Yeah, but they make a lot of US equipment, don't they? With lots of jets and different things. I mean, if you really take all that into account and know how much US spends in military and defense, I mean, is that really surprising?
Core business, the thing that keeps them afloat, is war and security. So Robert Stevens became the CEO in 2004. This was 3 years into the war in Afghanistan. And as the war intensified, so did Robert's wallet. And I know this because this is a public company, and all of the compensation for executives is public knowledge to all of us. You may have to dig through some boring.
All right, I don't want to pause too much, but something suddenly dawned on me. Right now, the situation that is going, how many companies are profiting right now, right? Because let's be honest, lots of countries are donating weapons. And those weapons are donated by country, but those countries are also paying the people who are making these weapons, which are these companies. So lots of military companies like Lockheed is probably making a lot of profit right now.
Foreign documents like the Lockheed Martin proxy statements from the 2000 annual meeting of stockholders on April 27, 2000, but you can find it. So let's see how Robert and his war business did in the 2000s. So before the war, in the late 90s, the CEO of Lockheed Martin was making around $2 million a year, if you include his salary and bonus. $2 million bucks. It's a pretty good compensation. Okay, but then the war started. Lockheed started to get a ton of contracts, started making more weapons, and look what happens to the CEO's compensation. His salary stays about the same, just over $1 million bucks, but his bonus now jumps up to $3.2 million, bringing his total compensation to around $5 million. This guy's making $5 million bucks. War's doing pretty good for him. Not bad. Let's jump 1 year later. It's now 2006.
Oh my god. Also another thing that's about CEO. People just think the CEOs are this just people who have jobs basically, who has annual incomes or whatever, monthly annual incomes, right? That you can put it on paper. No, that's not how things with the CEOs, right? CEOs literally run the company, so they have bonuses. I mean, you hear a lot of stories about lots of different companies' CEO who gets paid ridiculous money as bonuses because they made certain profit here and there, right? There are lots of wage gap issues, like how workers are being laid off, but because there is no money, while at the same times that company's CEO got what, 400% more bonus or something. So being a CEO is not some job; it's more like having some of the piece of, you know, having some piece of that company or something, because the company profits, the CEO profits a lot.
And Robert Stevens, the CEO of Lockheed Martin, brought in $18 million. Wait, what? From 2 million to 5 million to 18 million. Whoa, Robert
That's
Stevens is doing pretty darn good. Okay, but let's keep going. The year after that, Robert Stevens brings in $30 million
Oh my God.
compensation. 30 million. Sorry, 31.
2 to 30? I mean, that's a ridiculous jump. I bet all these people just basically sings them to self, I hope the war goes on or something like that, because they're making way too much profit. 2 million to directly 30 million.
$31 million. Non-equity incentive plan compensation, $8 million. Holy smokes. What? $30 million in compensation? I mean, if we were to like graph that, the war starts here. We're looking at something like this, and this. The war was a life-changing event for Robert Stevens, the CEO of Lockheed Martin. Okay, so that's our first guy who got super rich. Let's move on to the next one. A guy named Stephen Orenstein. This guy's company, called Supreme Group, was chosen in 2005 to feed US troops in Afghanistan, to provide all the food. I mean, when this guy got the contract, I'm sure the only thing that happened is that his eyes started flashing with money. Since he got the contract, Supreme Food's business increased 50-fold. Over the course of 6 years, the Defense Department paid Supreme $5.5 billion to deliver food to the troops. $5.5 billion. And it became 90% of his business. 90% of his company was providing food to troops in Afghanistan. I mean, talk about winning the lottery. But remember what I said about emergency funding and contractors? Orenstein realized that he could charge absurd amounts of money for the meals that he was providing to troops. And he knew that no one would notice because they were just throwing money at this war. The government contracts just kept coming no matter how pricey his meals were.
And no one noticed because it's people's money, right? And all the senators and president in charge are not going to give that much of a shit because it's not their money, it's people's money. This is why government's money spending is going to be inefficient compared to a particular company.
There's our beef ravioli.
Orenstein was like, dude, there's no adults in the room. Like, I'm a child in a candy shop right now. Let's see how far I can take this. Not only was he charging insane prices for meals, but then he started to create fake subcontracting companies and started to win contracts that were for nothing. And the Pentagon would just pay him a ton of money for doing no work. And what did he do? He just pocketed the cash. He got super...
Wait a minute, isn't that... I mean, there's a limit. Now it's a point-blank scam. Didn't he got screwed over after finding all this information out? Didn't government sue him or something? Like, okay, fine, it was war on, but you literally scammed us.
Super rich off of this, to the point where he became a billionaire. He got put on the billionaire list or whatever. But eventually he took it way too far and he got caught. And yes, we are now reading a Senate hearing from 2013 called Contracting to Feed U.S. Troops in Afghanistan. How did the U.S. Defense Department end up in a multi-billion-dollar billing dispute? I don't recommend you watch this hearing. It's very boring.
DLA had paid Supreme about $3 billion, including $1.6 billion for food and water and $1.4 billion for transportation and storage costs.
The numbers being thrown around in this hearing are insane. The Pentagon overpaid nearly $100 million just in like transportation costs, which, as one congressperson said, that is an astounding amount of money. And then to put it in perspective, she says that that amount would pay for nearly 100,000 children to have access to a Head Start program, which is an early education program in the US. But instead, this taxpayer money went into Orenstein's pocket. Nice one, Stephen. Think of the children. Come on. So what does it look like when someone gets punished for this? Well...
Yeah, this is really fucked up. I've seen lots of scientists, philosophers talked about things like this. Certain military contracts and certain, war elements like Afghanistan, obviously Iraq, where people throwed money, government throwed money, and people charge ridiculous money, that there is such a deficit that not just that, there are many organizations like, feeding the poor, feeding the kids, right? Educating the kids, even NASA, right? How much budget of NASA could have been increased is ridiculous, right? Like if only Pentagon would have been more efficient and just basically looked at things. Okay, how much we are charging, is this even like they didn't just turn blind eye because there's a war on, right? Maybe they hired double the staff of their Pentagon and put actual people to just see all the logistics and numbers, right? All the money left around would have been, funded a lot of things like, NASA and other charities and thing easily. That's just waste of money at that point.
Here we are in this Senate hearing where the people who gave all of this money without checking where it was going are being questioned. And when they asked what happened, they say things like this.
The contract management efforts that we applied to this did not keep pace with the changes that we were seeing in our requirements.
Let me translate that for you. What he was really saying is, we weren't really paying attention because, war. According to this court document, Stephen...
No, what he said was, we didn't anticipate this much of demand, and the pace and the demand was changing, and that's why the cost went high. Like, okay, really?
Eventually did have to pay up $389 million, but let's be honest, he got a little slap on the wrist, but the guy got rich off the Afghan war, which is why he's on this list. Next up is this guy, Eric Prince. This is the guy we talked about at the beginning who was like charging $6,000 to fly people out of Afghanistan.
I don't think any human being who has a hardened soul would support efforts to profit off of people's agony and pain as they're trying to depart a country and fearing for their lives.
He's an ex-Navy SEAL who inherited a bunch of money and decided to start his own private security company called Blackwater. Remember what I said, private security company really means
that's directly out of movies.
For hire. This guy trained military and police forces. In fact, he describes his mission for Blackwater as, quote, trying to do for the national security apparatus what FedEx did for the Postal Service. Privatize, make more efficient, get rid of red tape, etc., etc. Kind of a scary thought, but okay. He got his first contract in 2000. It was a small contract, $204,000, to help train the Navy for terrorist attacks. Then 9/11 happened. An absolute tragedy for the American people, but an incredible business opportunity for Eric Prince and his FedEx for the Army. The US was desperate to mobilize their troops for this new kind of warfare, so they turned to Blackwater to help them. The US hired Blackwater to come protect their CIA compounds or to escort VIP diplomats. But wait, let's just get something clear. What are these guys? Are they troops? Or like military? Technically, no, they're not. But they sure look like troops. I mean, look at these guys. But really, these guys are just like fancy security guards that the
Not really. They are probably, probably going to be some ex-Navy and ex-military, whatever army or something, but now became more privatized. And obviously, USA being more, is this a business? Is this something, anything, not even business? Is this something, let's see if we can give it to private sector to make it more efficient. That's how the mentality goes. So obviously the contracts were given out a certain security job, which is most like military job. Like, okay, we have to protect this asset. So let's send in the military. No. That's going to cost a bit more. Why not give this to this private sector? That's going to cost less or something. We'll just put out the contracts out. Right, and these people basically makes more money than your average soldier, obviously. So there are private companies who just steps in, but obviously things don't work like that. Like we just saw, prices just jumps way too high, and costs are more than the government would have handled, I guess.
government hires and gives them security clearances and sends them to war zones so that they can operate like soldiers under the jurisdiction of a private company. But they're just security guards, so they're not like mercenaries or anything, right?
No, they are mercenaries, right?
The government...
And also, what if local cities did that, right? Hire some company to police. Now they have power of police, right? What about responsibilities here, right? Certain private sectors act as a military, right? I mean, they are not US military, they are private sector, right? So certain shit they would do, they wouldn't have much of responsibility like an army soldier, active duty army soldiers would have done. So I don't know, this is kind of a shady area. I guess you have to put them in a specific jobs and not some, risky, not risky, sensitive jobs, let's just say, where fuck-ups could happen. Otherwise, it's basically people are going to say it's US military who fucked up, right? Not the private sector.
Had given Blackwater over $1 billion in federal contracts. Let me repeat, this little company that provides a private security force went from meager contracts of $200,000 to help train troops to sending troops abroad to actually be in the war zone and getting $1 billion worth of taxpayer money within just a few years. As you can imagine, giving guns and security clearances to a private army might lead to some thorny abuses of power.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
In 2007, the guards of Blackwater were in Iraq, in addition to Afghanistan, and they opened fire on unarmed civilians.
Indiscriminate shootings by Blackwater guards leading to the deaths of civilians.
In a crowded public square after a car bomb had exploded a mile away, they killed 17 Iraqis and injured 20 more. Blackwater lost their contracts. It was a huge scandal, and it was another instance where there was some accountability. And yet, Eric Prince sold the company and came out on top. Another guy who got really rich off the Afghan war. Oh, and those security guards who opened fire on innocent civilians were tried and convicted. But then, wait for it, they were completely pardoned by Donald Trump. Do we have any faith in humanity? Next up, we've got these.
Yeah, okay. First of all, any army soldier goes through the army's training and then enlists as a US soldier, wears a US soldier's uniform. There is certain responsibility, and there is this thing to it, like I'm a proper US soldier, right? Many responsibility towards that. There's a chain of command you need to fear. There are court martials and things. Things like that doesn't happen to private army. So putting private army in certain things, I mean, you can't privatize fucking everything. Like I said, you can't privatize police, right? You can't give a contract to some company and just say, now you're the police of this area. That's going to be abuse of power, obviously. You can't give them the police power now, right? Private sector. So the same thing should be with the army and navy. right? You can't just tell these people like, okay, instead of soldiers, we're going to send you. You have that power. Come on.
Two guys. They're nicknamed the War Dogs. There's a movie about them that I haven't seen, but I want to.
Sorry, kind of an emergency. Sorry, don't worry, I have to go first, I'm American.
But really, the best thing out there is this Rolling Stone article. These guys were ages 25 and 21 when they started an ammunition company. They bid the Pentagon and won $300 million worth of taxpayer money in contracts. And they were going to supply the Afghan National Army with guns and ammunition. I mean, this is insane. These were like early 20-year-old kids. One of these guys, David, was just a few months earlier a massage therapist. And then was like, I'm going to have a little change of career. I'm going to go sell $300 million worth of guns and ammunition to the federal government so they can fight a war in Afghanistan. These guys got super rich off of this and soon were living a fancy life with really nice cars and expensive apartments in like Miami. But what they were doing here was buying ammo from China and then selling that to the US government, which is like a giant no-no in arms like trading. They eventually got caught.
USA has many top-notch companies that make top-notch equipment. These people bought Chinese equipment sold to US Army. That's just some next level shit.
Pleaded guilty, and one of them was sentenced to jail for 4 years. So this is a rare case of like, guys got rich and then they got caught and they actually got punished, which didn't happen to Supreme Food or Eric Prince. The difference is like when you're like a 24-year-old kid, you don't have a lot of money and influence, so you can't like weasel your way out of accountability. But what this story shows you is just how easy it was to get in on this culture of endless money within the Pentagon. The massage therapist who had never owned a gun before started an ammunition and gun company and got $300 million for it. Just like a gold rush. Okay, so those are the War Dogs. Next up, we have this guy, Fahim Hashimi, one of the several Afghan nationals who got super rich, part of this group called the 9/11 millionaires. In the early days of the Afghan war, there was huge need for local fixers and translators. The people who got in early helping out US forces got really savvy to how the US was operating. And they quickly realized that they could provide a bunch more local services and make a ton of money. So Fahim started a business that eventually turned into like a media corporation with like TV stations and a construction company and even an airline. His company started racking in like $200 million a year in government contracts. There were a bunch of Afghans who got super rich riding on the coattails of all of this money being poured into the country, which it's like, good for them. Their country's been torn apart by outside superpowers for decades. Let them at least get something out of it, for heaven's sake. Next up, we have...
Okay, so one or two guys from Afghanistan profited from the war that is happening in Afghanistan and all the local people are suffering. That's not really a good thing, is it? One or two Afghani people got rich with the suffering of their own people. It's like, come on.
Our very own Congress. Nancy Pelosi and Ted Cruz aren't like arms dealers, but they can still get rich off of war.
Okay.
Everything is gone.
Because if you're a member of Congress, you can buy stocks in defense companies like Lockheed Martin, and a lot of them do. At least 47 members of Congress and their spouses hold between 2 million and 6.
The fuck? You're Congress. It's your job to decide, should we go to war, should we not go to war, and now you can spend money into buying stock in the defense market. So now you have incentive to keep the war going. How is that not conflict of interest?
$7 million worth of stocks in top defense companies. Oh, and it's not partisan. Of the 36 House members who hold stock in military contracts, 20 are Republican and 16 are Democrats. It's almost split in half. I mean, let's get into the details here. Like, which of the congressmen have the most money invested in defense companies?
Okay.
Good question. The winner for this year of Who's Getting Rich Off War is Kevin Hearn, a Republican from Oklahoma, who owns over $1 million in stock from defense contractors. $880,000 alone in Honeywell, which is an aerospace contractor that Congress really seems to love. And notice how well their stock has done, especially since 2009, when Obama sent a bunch of new troops to Afghanistan. I mean, this is a lawmaker who has to give approval when we go to war, and he stands to gain if we do. But wait, the conflict of interest gets worse when you look at somebody like Senator Gary Peters, a Democratic senator from Michigan, who is a member of the Armed Services Committee, which is the committee that authorizes the Pentagon's budget. Here's his financial disclosure. He's invested in a lot of things, including Raytheon Technology Corporation. Raytheon is a major government contractor for wartime things. This guy gives money to the Pentagon to do war things with private contractors, and he is invested in the private contractors. In July, this guy's committee voted to increase defense spending by $24 billion, which is more than President Biden even proposed. So in very direct terms, this guy is voting to put more money in his pocket. That is how our system works. Here's another financial disclosure of a senator who's on a committee that deals with cybersecurity and protection. She holds stock in 6 defense companies, with most of her money being invested in an IT contractor. Do you get it? IT contractor that she is invested in. Cybersecurity committee that she uses to vote to give money to the thing she's invested in. It's just like, come on. Oh. Okay, so that's our list. And let me be clear that this is not the exhaustive list of everyone who got rich. There are so many more people who got rich. There are so many more people who abused the system. We will never know their names. We will never hear about them because they didn't get caught. In the end, the Pentagon spent $14 trillion. $14 trillion. Between 30 and 50% of that went to private companies, military contractors. Companies that give huge payout, huge compensation to the top leaders. That's like $5 trillion worth of taxpayer money going to fatten the pockets of these corporations. And for what? What did we get? We now know that...
Okay, you know your country and all of you people of that country is basically way too rich. When you can basically spend money in one war that basically, you know, ranks up to trillions. And we are not talking about a 100-year budget here, right? It's like 10, 15 years, trillions. Like, damn, right? After getting all your needs done, right? After running the country, what money I had, I poured into Afghanistan to fight a war, and those are trillions. Like, what the hell?
It didn't do much for this country and its people. 20 years later, the country is falling back to where it started. But what it did do is it made these people really, really, really rich. Good for them. Okay, I'm gonna go try to not be depressed about how our democracy works. See ya.
Okay, I don't get it. Why, you know, this basically all the congressmen can put stocks into the defense companies, where they are the same people who gets decision, right? Who can vote on things. They're really critical, like even keeping the war on or not, or go to war or not, right? Damn. This is why there was some saying about, you know, US, government or Congress, whatever, that in order to keep the money flowing, war has to go on or something because of shit like this. This is ridiculous. Alright, people, that was really deep video by Johnny Harris. And yeah, all these names are kind of on the top of it. Of course, you're going to look for Lockheed CEO because it's Lockheed, so he's going to be on the list. But I'm pretty sure there are many people, right? Until somebody really deeply search for it, like really, really deeply search for it, would never be found out, right? The Supreme guys, basically who created subcontractors which are not there to do no job just to get money. That's a scam as a scam can come. And they got slapped on the wrist, like didn't get punished. Like, what the fuck? Like, how? That's the clear evidence. Like, what subcontract? That was no subcontract. You just scammed us. And yeah, that's just weird. Alright, well, that was Here's Who Really Won the War in Afghanistan by Johnny Harris. If you like my reaction, and want me to do more Johnny Harris reactions, don't forget to like and subscribe. Comment down if you want to react to a specific video. And yeah, I'll see you next time.